My name is Chloe, and today I will be taking you through the story of destroying the opium, looking at different ways in which we can use this story in an everyday circumstance or conversation. In the last few classes, you learned about the story of Lin Zexu, how he was commissioned to stop the opium trade, and how he was so determined to help China recover from this issue that he resisted all temptation and threats. But how can this story be relevant or useful in a conversation today? At what point would you ever need to talk about Lin Zexu and his destruction of opium? I wrote down a few of my own ideas. Here are some times where I think your knowledge of this story could be useful. Number 1, you're at university, having a discussion about current affairs, and the topic of illegal trade comes up. You can discuss how China dealt with it in the past and if this strategy would, or even could, be used in the present day. Number 2, you are in a debate team at school and you are asked what your opinion on drug use is. You need to give a factually supported debate, so you say why you are opposed to it and talk about how China suffered from the opium addiction in the early 1800s. Number 3, you are asked to talk about the pros and cons of international trade. Of course, you have lots of reasons to support it, but one reason to oppose it could be about the exploitation of trade ports and illegal activities that can occur if not carefully monitored. As you can see, you might talk about Lin Zexu and his destruction of opium on many different occasions. Do you know what your occasion will be today? Well, I would like you to imagine you are a tour guide working with foreign people in China. That will be your situation today. You'll be taking them on a tour of the Old Summer Palace. But how are the Old Summer Palace and the Opium War story related? We'll come back to that later. For now, we must focus on the story in the book. So our first task today is to summarize the story from the book. Your audience will be a group of foreign people on tour in China, so the summary should be exciting, perhaps involving some rhetorical questions wherever possible. For those who might not know, rhetorical questions are questions which don't require answers. In fact, I would like you to start your summary with this fact, which includes a rhetorical question. Did you know that by some estimates, as many as 90% of the young males along China's east coast were addicted to smoking opium by the 1830s? That is how you will start your summary. Aim for 350 words as a maximum. Take as much time as you need and come back to me when you have completed the task. Off you go. Okay, how did you get on? Did you manage to stay below 350 words? I have also a summary about the destruction of opium, and it goes like this. Did you know that very large numbers of the young men along China's east coast were addicted to smoking opium by the 1830s? This incredibly addictive drug caused an absolute deterioration in the health of Chinese population and also its economy. However, today, the use of narcotic drugs in China is 100% illegal. How did it ever overcome such a large-scale issue and stop social and economic collapse? Well, it was down to one man called Lin Zexu. Lin Zexu was a senior official in the Qing dynasty, and he witnessed the devastating effects that the importation of opium was having on the Chinese people, and sent many letters to the emperor, stating that if the trade of opium continued to spread, the country would soon not only struggle to pay its army, but also no longer have any fit men to fight. Initially, the emperor sent Lin to Guangzhou to suppress the trade at Canton Port. But when he ordered the opium traders to surrender their wares, they refused. The bold traders actually offered generous bribes to Lin, but he stayed true to his task and declined their offers. The traders were not happy. They would lose a lot of money if they couldn't sell the opium, so some tried to continue, ignoring Lin's orders. However, Lin Zexu was persistent and wouldn't back down. After 34 days, all of the opium had been handed over. It said that the street value was over £2 million worth. Lin commanded that all the opium be publicly eradicated. After 23 days, all of the opium had been burned and destroyed, and the inhabitants of Guangzhou cheered and clapped in admiration for Lin Zexu's devotion to the cause. Lin Zexu led the way in resistance from foreign invasion. He showed an incorruptible spirit, independent attitude, and proved that China would not bend at the knee to imperialist aggression. This trait continues to shine through today in modern China. Okay, this is my first draft, but of course, we need to make it more condensed, right? The reason for this is simple. If you are trying to educate a group of tourists whilst visiting landmarks and attractions, the area could be busy and hearing you might be difficult. Moreover, their attention could be difficult to hold for long periods of time. I don't need you to write this one down directly. Instead, I would like you to concentrate more on the length of time you talk aloud. You should aim for no longer than 1.5 minutes. To do this effectively, firstly, highlight the most important parts of your summary. Try to memorize these because you should include them in your 1.5 minute talk. Secondly, read through the whole summary 3 times. Do this aloud. Next, put down your paper and start to retell the tale, but time yourself. Can you say it all within 1.5 minutes? If not, which bits should you cut out? Finally, once you have your talk condensed to 1.5 minutes or less, rehearse it. Ensure you are speaking it loudly and clearly, or the tour group might not hear you in an outside environment. Once you are confident, come back to me so we can continue. Off you go. Hi, have you been practicing? Are you able to talk clearly? Is it under 1.5 minutes in length? Great job! I also gave this a go, and here is what I came up with. Did you know that huge numbers of young men along China's east coast were addicted to smoking opium by the 1830s? It was a highly addictive drug, and it was quickly destroying people's lives in the Chinese economy. There was one man who saw this devastation and realized that if something wasn't done soon about the importation of opium, then China would collapse. His name was Lin Zexu. He contacted the emperor and told him that the spread of trade must be stopped. The emperor agreed and sent Lin as an imperial envoy to Guangzhou to stop the traders. But the Western traders weren't happy and did what was quite common. They tried to bribe Lin in hope that he would turn a blind eye. But Lin rejected their bribes and persisted with the task. After 34 days, all of the opium had been reluctantly handed over. The dejected traders had lost over £2 million worth of goods. But people in China were relieved, and they cheered and clapped as Lin Zexu ordered the large amounts of opium to be burned and destroyed. Lin Zexu led the way in modern resistance from foreign invasion. He showed an incorruptible spirit, independent attitude, and proved that China would not bend at the knee to imperialist aggression. This trait continues to shine through today in modern China. So this is my version of events, and it was just over a minute long. This will come in useful later. So let's go back to your imaginary situation today. You'll be taking a group of foreign people on a tour of the old summer palace in Beijing. They want to be provided with lots of information and details, and they probably have lots of questions. But how are the old summer palace and the Opium War story related? That's what I would like you to find out. I'll give you 10 minutes to see if you can find the answer to my question. Use the internet to find the answer. I will give you a clue. One word, war. I'll see you in 10 minutes. Okay, did you find out what the connection is? Well, I'm going to give you a little information about this now. I'd recommend that you take notes because it will be useful later when we have a conversation. So after Lin Zexu destroyed the opium in April 1839, Britain, who was taking opium from its colonized country of India and exporting it to China, was pretty annoyed. They'd lost a grotesque amount of money, and when China made the trading of opium illegal, British tradesmen ignored the laws and tried everything they could to keep it going undercover, so to speak. But China continued to defend its borders, and the tension was growing quickly. After months of smaller conflicts, in November 1839, a major event occurred in which British ships attacked and sank a number of Chinese vessels at Canton. And then Britain had the audacity to declare war on China. The Chinese army wasn't quite strong enough to defend itself at the time, and so Britain defeated the Qing forces time and time again, claiming land and demanding China to pay them back for the money it lost in the eradication of the opium trade. In return, Britain offered nothing except to end hostilities. How rude! In 1865, France joined Britain in their attacks on China. They continued to force their way into ports around the country, and if they were refused entry, they would bully their way in, destroying major landmarks as a warning. One of the most jarring attacks was on the Emperor's Palace. The old summer palace in Beijing still allows people to walk amongst its ruins today. And in many of the beautiful parks around the country, you will see sad reminders of the unnecessary destruction imposed on the Chinese people. From time to time, the emperor resisted and fought back, which simply fueled the Anglo-French forces further. The Chinese economy was struggling and the emperor's prestige and power were diminished. After 11 years, in October 1860, the war finally came to a terrible end. Sadly, China had no choice but to surrender and comply with the opposition's demands. Finally, Britain and France withdrew their armies for a final time, and China was left to rebuild its nation. Thankfully, we can put this brutal series of events behind us now. However, if you go to the old summer palace, you can still see the remains of that hard time for the Chinese people. But thankfully, they have been able to come back from these terrible times with a much more determined spirit. So that is the connection. Did you know that already? Well, you may have already learnt about this, but foreign people will know very little about it. Please feel free to go back and make any notes on anything that you need. So now it comes to our conversation part. As I have already mentioned, you are my tour guide and we are at the Old Summer Palace in Beijing. Before we have the conversation, I will show you the questions you will be asked so you can prepare. Once you feel ready, you can play the video again. Here are the questions. Take as long as you need. Hi, welcome back. I would like to introduce you to my lovely friend Hong. Today, Hong will help us by taking the role of you. The conversation will look a little like this. I will ask you the question and you will pause the video in order to answer it. Once you've answered, you can press play again and Hong will give you a simple answer so you can compare and see if your answer was similar. Then I will continue with the next question and so on. Are you ready? Hi, I'm Chloe. Thank you so much for being my tour guide today. It's so busy here though. Why do you think public places like parks are so popular in China?
I think it is because of many reasons. A very practical one is that people come to get out of their homes. The population of China is dense and we live in flats and apartments. Our houses don't often have gardens, so we go outside and enjoy the green space. China is also a health-conscious nation, and you see many older people enjoying exercise here. We love our families, and this is a great place to spend time with loved ones.
I see. Yes, there are lots of children playing, and I have seen areas of gym equipment for the older generation. I think it's great. What other activities can be done, or what things can you learn in a park like the Old Summer Palace?
Well, it depends on which park you go to. Some more traditional parks allow you to walk around the lake and take in the beautiful scenery. You can go on wonderful hikes and have picnics on top of mountains. Other places have fun sports activities like rock climbing and bungee jumping, where you can jump off really high places, suspended with a rope. You can take boat rides and explore caves. They can be educational too, like here in the Old Summer Palace, where you can read information about the history and architecture.
Yes, I love to learn about the history of China, and the architecture is stunning. I have noticed in a lot of parks that I have been to, there are many ruined buildings and temples. Why is this?
Well, many of these things were destroyed by the Anglo-French forces in the 1800s. They attacked China on many occasions due to eradicating the trade of opium. Britain was making a great deal of money by taking from India and selling it to China. But when China banned it, Britain declared war. Over the years, the Anglo-French forces destroyed countless important buildings as a threat and warning to the emperor that he should comply with their demands, and sadly, one of the most jarring attacks was on his palace.
Wow, I didn't know any of that. But did China have a problem with opium? I know that Britain did during the 1800s, but I wasn't aware China had issues. It's so strict about drug use. How did they stop it?
I am not going to give you the answer to this one because you have practiced it already. This should be the story of Lin Zexu.
I've noticed in some places the buildings are restored, like areas of the Great Wall, but in other places the buildings and ruins are preserved. Which one do you think is better?
I think it really depends. For safety reasons, Often the buildings need to be restored so they don't fall down or cause injury to anyone. It is also lovely to see what a building should have looked like many years ago, so restoration is a great way to do this. But preserving the original features is important, and I think preserving something is better if it is feasible, so we can truly admire the creations of our ancestors in its original state.
Yes, that's true. Thank you for that information. It's been really interesting. Shall we move on to the next landmark? I'd love to hear about the Great Wall a little bit more. Thank you for joining us today. That's it for this lesson. I hope that you have learned a lot today. I'm sure you have. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.